any memorable situations of, getting MF'd or something by a sports luminary for something that you didn't even say?
No, but I remember once there was a baseball meeting. They would hold the owners' meeting would be at O'Hare or whatever, the Marriott or something. And I went up to Steve Stone back then. I said, Steve, can you come on the score? I remember what he said. He said, I wouldn't come on that station for all the money in China. Well, not long after that, he was getting paid by the station, right? So things really change. I'll tell you a funny story that happened with me and Mike Murphy. This is in Pittsburgh. So I'm covering the Stanley Cup Finals, and they put us in the stands. It was like right in the stands, part of the auxiliary press. Well, I'm going to go on with Murph at 7 o'clock, and, he says, George Ofman, he's in Pittsburgh, and we're going to go live to him in a couple of minutes. Okay, fine. 10 minutes goes by. He's still talking about something else. Producer comes on and says, we're trying to get him to come to you. Okay, let's go. 10 minutes pass, 15 minutes pass, 20 minutes pass, 25 minutes. I'm still on hold. He's still talking about something else. The producer said, I'm trying to get him to go to you. I said, if he doesn't come to me in 2 minutes, I'm hanging up. 2 minutes later, I hung up. Never came to me.
Oh, God.
The whole time.
See, I remember your frustration when they would go to you late, even just for updates, George. I was telling Danny about the shared space. You, on Belmont, you had that back update studio right behind the on-air studio. And that's where all of us who were editing also had to edit. And we could only get in there and edit in between your updates. So when they went to you late for an update, you'd be frustrated, but we'd be standing outside, tapping our feet, waiting. It was a disaster for everybody. And then I would edit up until like 20 seconds before your update. And you'd come in there and force us out and immediately turn on the mic and go. Crazy.
Well, and it was like a closet.
Yep.
Anyhow, and you're right. They would come to me 15 minutes late. And then I would be on talking with them, and then I'd be coming back 10 minutes later, and I'm thinking to myself, what the hell are we doing this for? But you're right, that's what happened. And it was such a tiny little building and then, if there's a breaking story, I'd walk into the studio with them, and that was another 10 or 15 minutes. You're talking to whether it was, North and Jiggets or Terry and Dan. But it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
See, some of the most memorable stuff was you trying to get through updates, like the professional that you were, while Terry Boers and Dan McNeil would just be destroying you and interrupting. And I think we have some.
Yeah,
of
we've got at least one of them here. We're talking to George Ofman. Tell Us a Story I Don't Know, the podcast series. He interviews Mike North, Dan McNeil, Hub Arkish. So if you want to listen to long forms with sports media people in Chicago, listen and subscribe to George's podcast. But George, as the straight man dealing with the wacky talk show hosts, here's a famous one.
2-0 Cubs in the bottom of the fourth, and it's Sosa's home run, a towering line drive in the first inning, a controversial shot. Third base umpire immediately pointed fair, and that's the
George,
only run
which
of the game.
was it? Wait a minute, hold on.
Was it towering or was it a line drive?
Get some coffee and a towering line drive. You can't have it both ways.
Yeah, oh, yes, you can.
No, you can't,
yes, you
John.
can.
You can't have it both ways.
Gentlemen, it was a towering line drive.
George, you want Julie to finish it. It's either a line drive or it's a towering home.
Gentlemen, I'll repeat myself. It was a towering line drive.
Don't make me come out there.
Come on out here.
Bank your little hiney.
I didn't deserve that.
I'll give her by Ryan.
You ask North and Jiggets, and even Arnie Harris, who was on, it was a towering line drive.
We standing by towering line drive, George?
Yes, absolutely. Let me tell you something. That is now 28 years ago in May. And, I never thought of the term towering line drive until it happened. And I don't know why I said it, but I did. Yeah, look, it's an oxymoron, but I try to explain to people, think about a really good golfer with a driver on the tee, okay?
Yeah.
The ball is hit on the line and it's hit high. It's a towering line drive.
Yeah, hey, this is the station of malaprops. Spiegel last week said that he was wrapping a situation around his head.
Like a scarf, George. That's what I do.
I said that we were entering a double-edged sword of pain.
Yeah, and then you said you were going to move the baton.
I was going to move the baton. Cody Westerland said we were moving, or no, we were switching. We were switching goalposts. Yeah. Shane said that we were climbing up
I was trying to paddle up a hill without a paddle.
Oh, that's good. I like that.
Yeah. So, I feel like you're like the godfather of the malaprop, maybe in some ways.
You know what?
It's still happening.
Mm-hmm. Do you know what's great about that? I still get it on social media, and it's really great. People, if I'm commenting on something or I put something out, and then there'll always be somebody, whether it's on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, saying, "Was that a towering line drive?" I love it. It's 28 years later.
And the fun at the expense doesn't come without the respect. Like, that's why it's funny, because Parkins says a lot of things well in 20 hours.
Yeah, but no one, that's the thing, George, no one ever remembers my brilliant points. They never come up to me, but it's hey, you said something really dumb, But and it's not dumb. It's just it's live radio. Nothing, you know what I mean? So
it's what the score was based on from the beginning. You mentioned Terry Boers. Terry, and I say this with all due respect to everybody at the Score and other stations, is the best talk show host in the history of our business. Terry is. What am I saying was for? Terry is brilliant. Knows his sports, he's quick-witted, and he's funny as hell. And he would make me laugh. But people will remember this to the point where I couldn't talk.
I do remember.
I literally was crying in laughter. He's such a funny guy. I loved it. When we would go through these phases, I would be there like 10 or 15 minutes, and I'm just like in tears. And it's one of the great moments, I think, in the history of the station is when the O.J. Simpson trial was taking place. Terry took on all comers. It was great radio.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I was on the board for some of those moments, George, when they'd go 10 or 15 minutes just messing around with you. You couldn't get through the update, and it was better than any guest we could do. It was better than anything. And you're right about Boers. He had a way of getting the absolute most comedy possible out of anything. And it's 100% something to aspire to and think about. So.
Well, he was great with Dan, and then he was great again with Dan Bernstein. And it was, it may have been a different show, but it was still the same Terry.
The behind the scenes back then, like we've asked everybody who was the original, you obviously made the bet on the Score calling instead of Toronto, but here we are 30 years later. Did you think it had this much staying power?
At first, it was really hard to tell because sometimes the attitudes would really be down because they were making mistakes as they were measuring, what kind of audience we had. But it didn't take long for me to realize as I was going in the field that people were talking about the station a lot. And as time went on, I realized, hey, I picked the right place. And it turned out that it not only survived, but it flourished. I mean, it had Mike North, and Mike was the driver. He was so unique. I'd never met anybody like him. He's got a AAA personality, and he helped drive the station. And then the rest of the guys were terrific. And look at all the people that have followed. I was just thinking about this the other day. Think of all the producers that we've had that have gone on to such bigger and better things, from Jesse Rogers and Judd Surratt and Matt Fishman and Dan Zampillo and Matt Spiegel, and I'm missing a whole bunch of people. It has spawned great talent. I think that's fabulous.
He's the host of Tell Me a Story I Don't Know, the podcast series. Subscribe to it. You'll hear some great production and old audio and great media stories. He is a Score original, hired on the same day as Mike Greenberg. It's debatable who ended up having the bigger career. I was right, George. Right? Is that fair to say?
Well, no. The only difference between Greeny and I is just how many zeros are at the end of our checks.
That's the only difference.
That's the only one.
That's
it.
That's the only one.
And a legendary tennis player too, George Ofman.
Oh, I once played Greeny in tennis, and he crushed me.
Oh, see,
that's disappointing.
I wouldn't admit
Crushed me. Very good athlete. Really great guy too, by the way. Wonderful talent, and I'm thrilled for his. And we had him on one of the first few podcasts was with Greeny, and reminded me that the very first person he ever worked with professionally in this industry was me. at MAQ All News. He was an intern, and that's who he worked with. So I didn't remember that, but it was really something.
Well, that's great, George. Good luck on the podcast and its continued growth, and thank you very much for the stories and the memories. Thank you.